There it is. All right, everybody, welcome back to Data with Direction. Tonight we are talking to Ridah of Aviadata, and he is going to tell us about how he has taken his passion for aviation and data and combined them into his business, Aviadata, to help flight schools revolutionize their operations. So, Ridah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first off, Chris, thank you so much for having me here. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. A little bit about myself. My background has nothing to do with data nor tech. I have a bachelor's in fixed wing aviations. So basically, I'm a pilot. I have my private pilot license, and I have probably around 4 years of experience running airports, managing airports, and helping airlines become more efficient. And just recently, my contract ended, and I'm very passionate about aviation, and I really wanted to stick with that niche. And so I decided to turn my love for aviation and see how I can do more things on the side. That's when I found about data, and I started learning some SQL and some Python. And slowly, my passion for aviation and tech turned into a small business where now I'm supporting flight schools, helping them expand and grow larger, specifically in the state of Virginia.
That's awesome. So let's go back to the beginning a little bit. What first got you interested in data? And, was it the love that obviously you talked about? You had that love for aviation first, but what got you into data as well?
So data drives us. Data drives aviation. Without data, we don't know if we're doing good, well, and data is not necessarily just programming. We can visualize data. If an aircraft is going up, we can visualize that. We can see that. If an aircraft is going down, we can also see that. And so the thing that really got me into data is my ability to dig deep and figure out how I can enhance my performance, one as a pilot or as an airport manager, using our data, our technical data. So the more data you learn about yourself, about your operation, the better you become and the more effective you become at what you do.
Very cool. What were some of the biggest learning curves that you kind of encountered when you were working with data and started that journey?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing people usually say, oh, learning how to code or learning how to use SQL. For me, it was straightforward, understanding how to do that. The biggest challenge is probably understanding how to explain technical details to non-technical personnel. Learning how to use visualization tools such as Microsoft BI or Tableau or Looker, and learning how to download the data, extracting the data. I was working with operations all my time at the airports. I did not know how to use or extract this kind of data, whether it be XML files on where planes are located over the sky, or basic queries on how we can load them from JSON files and switch them to other files. So using that data and explaining it and visualizing it were pretty much my challenges at the time. And with practice, I became very perfect with them.
That's awesome. Especially learning to work with unstructured data, like you said, XML files and JSON. That's a challenge sometimes, especially when you're used to very structured data like Excel files, CSV files, and tables. That's awesome. So what skills or tools did you find the hardest to learn, and how did you overcome that?
I guess the hardest tools that I was definitely Microsoft BI visualization tool. And I would just go on YouTube and watch how people would do it. And I would definitely ask ChatGPT. But again, ChatGPT wasn't a visualization tool for me. So I would have to stick with my YouTube videos. And then I would mess around. I would try and make mistakes on purpose and see what comes out in terms of graph charts, bubble charts, or whatever kind of whatever data I'm trying to visualize. So that's definitely, that was a challenge for me to learn. And definitely learning how to visualize Python code or code snippets. Again, I would make mistakes on purpose to understand where I'm coming at and how this code is being structured.
And I think that's one of the things we talked about just before the video started, as we are kind of getting ready. if you're not breaking something as you're learning, you're probably not learning and growing, right? I mean,
Correct.
if you're not breaking something, then you're not really working. You're just going through the motions. So yeah, I think that breaking stuff and learning how to deal with it is one of the biggest things that you could do as you're ramping up in data. Learning what those, different errors look like, how to handle different situations. Those are the types of things that make you versatile and agile to enough to quickly resolve them as well. Uh,
And
awesome.
it's definitely experience that you can add to yourself. And like you said, you become more experienced with using tools like that.
Very cool. So, can you share, kind of going into that, what are one or two of the pivotal moments in your learning journey where something finally, clicked and you got it, right?
Definitely in my data journey, and this hasn't to do anything with visualization and more just like coding, if else statements, um, those are, so that definitely clicked in my head after like I practiced probably like 100 times. And I would like do something like if car print this, else something else. So for me, that really clicked when I started to realize like it's just I could see the pattern in code. When I started seeing a pattern in if else statements or in loop statements, that really clicked in my head. It's like, oh, so programming or scripting or whatever you want to call it, it is a pattern at the end of the day. And so that's when it started to really click that everything is a pattern. Same with visualization, data visualization tools.
Yeah. Yeah, with coding especially, I think, and with data engineering, this is something that we talked about with Shane a couple, last week. Something that we'll talk about next week when we have Ramona on. Patterns are a big deal, right? You develop patterns for a lot of things in your life, not just with programming and data, but you develop a pattern of I wake up in the morning, I do this, I do this, I do this. It's same thing with data, right? You have these standard patterns that you use every time you encounter a situation, every time that you walk into a certain troubleshooting situation, right? When something's going, something has failed, you have developed, whether you realize it, whether it's conscious or unconscious, you've developed these patterns, and it's important to develop those patterns. And the only way sometimes to develop them is through just naturally through experiencing some of those situations. But the other important piece I think is to document some of those patterns, right? Especially when it comes to data and when it comes to programming. If you could document those kind of, especially in your business, if you could document those patterns and kind of templatize them, right? So that you can just easily reuse them and they become portable from one situation to the next. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that for a lot of people getting into programming, that loop piece, understanding loops, when that clicks, like it's such a big door opener, right? For people that once looping clicks, then like things start to fall into place with code, with programming. So we've got a question. Do we recommend for a fresher to start working as a fabric data engineer?
That's a good question.
That's a great question, TMBX. Um, Excellent question. And I'll say with Microsoft pushing companies, not just developers, but companies as well, into Fabric, that it's good to start learning. Microsoft is investing a lot of time, money, and energy into Fabric. They have discontinued the DP203, which was the Azure Data Engineer certificate, and they have the DP600 and 700 now, which are the Fabric and Data Engineer certificate and the Fabric Data Analyst certificates. And so they're definitely pushing both programmers, developers, and businesses into Fabric from a Azure perspective. Synapse is still out there, so I think that's an important piece to continue to learn. They don't necessarily have all of the connectors built out in Fabric for data pipelines yet that they have available in Synapse and ADF, but but they're working it. They're working that direction, and Fabric will soon be kind of the go-to environment for people that are on Azure, for companies that are on Azure. So yes, great question. All right, so getting back into our stuff here. So what role? Sorry, and this one might be a little self-promotional, so I apologize. What role has mentorship played in your growth, and how has it helped you avoid some common pitfalls?
So, I mean, I can never overstate the importance of mentorship for anyone in any career, let alone specifically data engineering. Um, I really value the help that you provide and working with you in terms of mentorship. As a mentee, I can say 100% the support that I get is phenomenal because I get to ask you questions, individual questions, and you can help me with those questions, whether they are data related engineering questions, interview questions, resume, or projects. And sitting down and understanding how to approach all of those helps a lot when you have someone experienced like yourself, Chris, that can guide me and other mentees through the process. And on top of that, if someone's like myself who has a passion for data, you get to share this data with your mentor. So I get excited when we get on our calls together because we get to really bounce off topics about the latest thing in engineering, the latest thing in data, and how we can enhance both of us ourselves in the data world.
And even outside of like our mentoring sessions, you know I think that mentoring is so important in your career, in your life, and we all run into those people that kind of are our mentors or our support through the years. So definitely, if there's any other other mentorship situations that you've been in that have encouraged you, feel free to talk about those as well.
Sure. I have a um, pilot mentor who guided me how to get my private pilot license. And I can't stress enough the importance of getting a mentor in a lot of things. I wouldn't go to my father for flying stuff or for financial stuff. I wouldn't go to my father or parents or friends for data engineering stuff. So definitely seeking out people who are experts in their field is crucial, whether it be flying, how to become a better pilot, how to enter the airlines, or becoming a data engineer in this case, or even a financial mentor, where to save your money. I have also a financial mentor, and he is phenomenal because I get to ask him detailed questions on how I can save myself for a better financial future.
I think having a financial mentor or a financial advisor is so important for people, especially if you're younger than myself, and you're early in your career, and you have so much risk that you could still take in kind of saving and building up things like your 401k and going out there and really having somebody that could help to guide you financially. It makes such a huge difference in your life. You might not notice it right now, but I promise you that 5-10 years from now it'll make a huge difference in your overall life. So yeah, that's awesome. So tell us about Aviadata.
Sure.
What inspired you to create a company that blends aviation and analytics? And yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. Kieran is asking a question real quick. What do you guys think about Databricks versus Snowflake versus Fabric? Which among these is a good long-term prospect to get into? And then we'll get into
I've used Snowflake. Snowflake is really good.
I love Snowflake. Snowflake's one of my favorites. Fabric. Here's the thing, and Ridah, I think that you could echo this as we've kind of talked through things. it is less about which of those tools that you're going to go for and more about doing the research and the legwork of kind of your dream and ideal job positions, and identifying which of those tools is most prevalent in those job recs, right? um, because that's where you'll want to focus your time, your energy, and your work towards a certification, and your work towards deepening your knowledge of that platform. Personally, I love Databricks and Snowflake. I am lucky enough to have the opportunity now to have a couple different things going on in my business where I am working with both Databricks and Snowflake. And I am a Microsoft partner, which means that I'm also working with Fabric. So I get to touch all three at least weekly, if not daily. My favorite of the three is Databricks. Um, Mostly because I love Spark and and especially when you're dealing with large data, right? When you're dealing with huge amounts of data, petabytes of data, hourly, Databricks is really the way to go. But Fabric and Snowflake definitely have their place as well. It really depends upon the use case and making sure that you're using the right tool for the right situation. How did your mentor-mentee relationship start?
I should. Do you mind if I go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I actually went on a search. I feel like I encourage everyone to go out and search for mentors. Google search, YouTube. I was seriously looking for someone that was able to help me. So I use LinkedIn a lot to build my credibility. And on LinkedIn, I found Chris, and I actually started getting a couple of YouTube videos. And that's when I was like, huh, Chris sounds like an interesting person. He knows what he's talking about. And we set up a call to get to know each other more from a professional standpoint. And we slowly start to talk about what we want, our goals, and how we can help each other. So definitely do your research and go out there and search. Reddit is a good source. YouTube is a good source. LinkedIn is a great source. And people also do self promotions. They're looking for mentees as well. So I was lucky enough where Chris took me under his wing.
And I'll say that it's important to find somebody, like Rita's saying, find somebody that fits your personality, right? I think it's so important to not just grab the first person that comes along. Um, it needs to be, it needs to be a two-way relationship, right? It needs to be somebody that you're going to feel comfortable talking to, that you're going to feel comfortable opening up with what your fears are about the situation that you're in, about what you're really working on, what you're really failing with, what you're really leaning on AI for, and what you really have learned on your own. And that communication has to be open and honest. And if you don't feel comfortable with that person, then it's not going to be a rewarding relationship on either side. So I just like Rita saying, go out, listen to YouTube videos, see how these people are posting on LinkedIn, and identify the person that fits best with where you're at in your career, with where you're at with your personality, and make sure that it's a good fit before you jump in. That's my 2 cents. All right, so back to telling us about Aviadata. This is
Sure.
I've been excited.
Yeah, I've been the reason why I think I started this is I'm someone who likes to know everything about everything, and I'm someone who's very passionate about aviation, and I've realized that we have great people in the aviation industry who have great plans, and we have a great support system here in America for the future of aviation. But their knowledge about it is always limited. And what I mean by that is people in charge of the aviation industry are sometimes just pilots or just airport managers or just people who have experience in air traffic control tower or people who just have experience in making regulations. But rarely do you have someone who has an understanding of how airports work, airlines works, and is a pilot himself, and surrounds himself with aviation trends. And so I took initiative upon myself to say to myself, I can also be a leader in aviation. I don't have to wait until I get older and have like 50 years of experience to talk about aviation. And so after my contract ended with United a while back, I was really passionate. I wanted to do something. I wanted to help the aviation industry. And there's a lot of places where the aviation industry needs help. Um, and by all means, I'm not saying I'm not saying we are not in a bad situation. We're doing great, but there's always more room
for improvement. Yeah.
So while Boeing is doing great things, and the Department of Transportation is doing great things, they're all working on the bigger projects. And so I took initiatives to create Aviadata to work on the smaller projects, to help the smaller flight schools, to help the smaller airports expand and grow, because they don't necessarily get the most funding. So it started out as a passion project because I know how it feels for a pilot or I know how it feels for a flight school to not make enough money because I went to a similar situation at flight school. I know how it feels for an airport trying to expand its operations, but they're not getting funding. So when I created Aviadata, yes, I wanted to help companies, help small airlines, and help small flight schools, but I also wanted to show them that I'm not just someone who coming from above, but I'm someone on the same level as you are. I see your struggles and I know what's going on and I know how I can help you through data.
And I think that there are so many opportunities out there for other people also to take their passion in some other area, not necessarily aviation, but and combine it with data and service these smaller businesses, right? Because that's what flight schools are a lot of times. They're independent small businesses and they need help with data. I mean, a lot of times they're kind of, it leads into our next question about the biggest challenges that you see in flight schools. But, a lot of times I know with small businesses, they're doing what they can with what they have. But oftentimes, uh, you know, they could use the help, but they can't afford to bring on somebody full time uh, to help with that. And so having somebody that is a business that can help part time, and help for certain things, then really can help move the needle for especially for small and kind of mid-sized businesses. But leading into that, what Karen's got another question here. Among many automation tools, ETL tools, more like AI, more AI like Gen AI, Agentic AI. How many more do you guys? How and many more? How do you guys think someone could position them? Does the idea of mastering a particular skill is still relevant? Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. Hey, somebody liked our video. Super excited. Oh, it's my brother. So uh, got distracted by my brother liking our video. Okay, so I think that it's still important, right? Even with all these AI tools out there, it's still important to master particular skills, specific skills. And Rita, I know that you use AI in some of your work and some of your studies, which I think is excellent, right? Use AI, use the tools for what they are, but understand that there's flaws in them. I mean, uh, I know, Rita, we've talked about this, that you've experienced where AI starts hallucinating.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite give you. It gives you very literally sometimes what you ask for, and um, and maybe because it doesn't understand the whole picture, or because of just limitations of AI, it might give you something that doesn't really fit and doesn't really give you the answer that you're looking for. And if you're not knowledgeable enough to identify that and see that, then you often don't know until it's too late. And so still mastering skills like SQL, like Python, still are so important, because you still have to understand what's going on in those situations.
Exactly. And if I can just pitch in quickly, On that note, it's really important, and this applies to myself even right now, is to having the ability to read basic code snippets, especially when it comes to the pipelines, where things are stored, where they're going. Yes, you can use AI to develop that pipeline, but if you yourself don't know how to read and understand what the code is saying, it's going to be what you mentioned, Chris, a long time ago. It's going to form technical debt.
Mhm.
And so it's really essential to understand the basic fundamental foundational skills of SQL or Python or whatever tech stack people are using.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, what is the biggest data challenges that you've seen flight schools face?
There's a lot. I guess the easiest one is, and I'm surprised to share, I'm actually shocked. Not, I'm shocked to share this, but also it's very wide range of emotions, is that a lot of small flight schools, they don't versus the actual flights that have been completed. They have a calendar where they log flights, but that calendar does not show them what's going on. It doesn't show them if it was completed, if it was canceled, and so that's really important to have as a flight school. You need to know how many flights were booked. Of those booked flights, how many of them were scheduled and set to go and successful. And a lot of bit small flight schools, they advertise themselves saying, "Hey, we scheduled 1,000 flights the past 2 months," and then you look at their data and you're like scratching your head. And I have to explain to them, like, that's great, but do you know more than half of them were either canceled or there was something going on? And they're like, "Oh yeah, but we don't have that documented anywhere." So, and this falls back into digitalization.
Yeah.
Before documenting, before creating a visualization tool for them or a basic software for them, a lot of small local flight schools still use paper. And paper, we still, in the aviation industry, paper are still important, especially for backup. There's a regulation for that, where if you have to use software, you have to have paper backup. But a lot of small flight schools, they just have paper. And especially for logbooks, especially for scheduling. Um, so I'm helping a lot of flight schools to digitalize first and then start to give them insights about specific KPIs on how they can perform better. When it comes to scheduling, that they have to check back with the certified flight instructor and the student, did you actually go on this flight? What happened? Why did you not go on this flight? Because when you turn on the engine and you don't take off, you're losing money. When you turn on the battery and not take off, you're losing money. So in the calendar, it's a scheduled flight, but is it completed? And so I get to help them to visualize that, just basically visualize for them scheduled flights versus completed flights versus canceled flights.
That's awesome. Uh, so, kind of leading into what you just said there, what are some of the metrics or KPIs that are most important in aviation training analytics?
I'm going to be very biased here because I'm working on this as we speak, and from what I've seen is uh, like I said earlier, the KPIs is scheduled flights, actual flights, cancellation reasons. What else? Training slot fills. Are training slots being filled? Um, there's so many things that I can think of the top of my head. Example: lesson completion rate. Um, a instructor come back, land down, but the lesson itself wasn't fully completed in the air. So the pilot just lost his money. The flight school just put a lot of money on the student and the certified flight instructor, but the lesson wasn't completed. So those are just a little bit of KPIs, and I hope I answered that question. But there's so many KPIs, like outside, for example, KPIs for e-commerce stores. It'd be how much consumer growth there is, retention rate for specific departments. But within aviation, within flight schools, you can narrow it down to not just retention, but to very individualized things. If that, hopefully, that answers your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you talked a little bit about some of the challenges that aviation, that flight schools have. You've talked about some of the KPIs and metrics that they have. Tell me about how Aviadata comes in to help solve those challenges. And maybe if you have a specific story where you're able to help one of your flight schools that you've worked with.
Yeah, definitely. And I love this topic. Now things get really serious. What we do at Aviadata is we do our research about the pilots. We categorize in something called spotlight analysis. I can't go and I can't create surveys for all the 1 million pilots across the nation. Instead, I gather a lot of pilots as much as I can on Reddit, on social media, and I have them take surveys. I try and go to local aviation events, and I try and have pilots, student pilots, commercial pilots, certified flight instructors to take my surveys. Those surveys are golden and key is what makes Aviadata successful. Based off of their surveys, we can create data, qualitative and quantitative data, and we can share that with flight schools. So an example of that is right now there's something called the instrument certificate, instrument license, that allows you to fly in the clouds. And it's really important to get.
Specifically, even during certain weather
Correct, especially if there's icing. And a lot of pilots who want to become an airline pilot, they have to do it. There's no negotiation. But I work with pilots who are hobbyists, and flight schools are trying to get those hobbyist pilots to get that instrument license. The question is, how can we get them to get that instrument license? How do we address that? So the biggest question is, how do we get hobbyist pilots, people who don't want to be commercial pilot, to get their instrument pilot? What can we do as a flight school? Again, back to the research and surveys. If I can, I'm going to share my screen here quickly. Let's see. Let's go to this quickly and then share screen, present, share screen. These are two monitors. Okay, let's see. Let's share this screen. Awesome. So let's see if you guys can see my screen. Yes, you can. Awesome. So I took a survey for 100 pilots, and I went out to these flight schools who had that question about what can we do to get pilots get their instrument license. Well, first off, I decided to do what can we do outside of the instrument license? What do we know about our pilots in the local area? So this is a survey of 100 pilots that is anonymous. That's part of the survey. It's anonymous. We don't know anything about you. We just get the data about flight hours, when do you fly, how do you fly, what you know, what you don't know. This is what I learned, and this is what I shared with the flight schools, and this is how I can turn it into visualizations from quantitative data. Pilots. So what this dashboard is talking here is pilots from the age of 20 to 60 and above, and how often do they fly in icing conditions. So when do they cancel and when do they not cancel in icing conditions? So what I've realized is a lot of pilots below the age of 40 in the green are willing to fly when there's icing conditions. These are private pilots. So this now presses a safety matter. So I'm trying to share this with the flight school, like, hey, you can address these pilots by advertising, by, hey, you want to be a safer pilot? You can start targeting pilots who are hobbyists below the age of 40, that you can now get your instrument license to become a safer pilot. And then they can start focusing on these hobbyist pilots, even if they don't want to take their instrument rating, that they should not be really flying when there's icing conditions outside. Right. And if you look to your left screen, the red X's is pretty much showing the more pilots have, the higher the ages, the more likelihood of pilots getting canceling their flight, which makes sense because they probably have more flight experience. Even on the chart on the right, the pilots who with the higher amount of flight hours pretty much also cancel those flights. So now I get to help these flight schools target pilots with lower hours and below the age of 40, because they can start not necessarily chasing them, but trying to address it from a safety issue. And every pilot wants to be safe. No pilot out there wants to lose their pilot license. No pilot out there wants to crash and die. So when you show flight schools addressing this by a safety concern and showing them, instead of tell them, hey, the instrument license costs you $8,000, come and get it. A pilot is not going to do that. No one wants to pay $8,000.
Right.
But when you come down to a pilot and tell them, hey, have you thought about becoming a safer pilot? Oh, yeah, of course. Have you thought about getting your instrument license? Yeah, but I don't know about it. But then you show them this, you show them these information, you show them the charts that it's a safer thing to do, and you're taking risk by flying into icing conditions. Then wheels start turning in their head. They're like, this is probably something I should do. And flight schools actually love seeing this because, unfortunately, again, even big flight schools, they don't do research about their own pilots. Maybe they're afraid, I understand, but the best thing about this is it's all anonymous. You don't know who the pilot's name is. You don't know the pilot's student number is. You don't know anything about these pilots. And so I was able to help multiple flight schools in my local region to really push for the instrument license from a safety perspective, not just from a money perspective. Because realistically speaking, the instrument license is not going to get cheaper. It's not going to get cheaper. So how can we advertise? We advertise through safety. We encourage pilots to become safer pilots by getting their instruments. And it's something, there's a lot of ego happening in the aviation industry. So it's something to brag about. Oh, I'm instrument rated. Oh, he's instrument rated. That's cool. That means he's a safer pilot. So I hope that helps answers your questions. What I do as Aviadata is there's a lot of research behind what we provide. And obviously I turn this into a PowerPoint and I give them a small portfolio and I sit down with the head of operations or the senior chief instructor, and I explain to them what's going on, how much each license versus certificate costs, what you could do. And so I break down things to them. And at the end of the PowerPoint, I give them insight, strategic insight based off of the data I gathered for them. One of them is increased marketing efforts for IFR, which is the instrument license, and commercial programs. And they loved it. It was amazing. And so that's what we do as Aviadata is we do what needs to be done from qualitative metrics. Aviation is great. People are doing amazing. Everyone's thriving, but there's always room for doing the small thing to bring that level of professionalism and not perfectionism, but bring that level of the full package, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a couple of comments here. We have Ramona. Welcome, Ramona. Ramona is, for those of you that are joining late, Ramona is actually our guest for next week. That we're gonna do this at 1 p.m. Eastern time. But super excited to have Ramona next week. But Ramona actually says, it sounds to me like you're modeling a business and describing various processes, which I think that absolutely is what you're doing here. You're helping to really model those businesses and walk them through some of the processes that they're having to do. She also has a suggestion for the title on you, going back to your graph, going back to your Power BI slide, your Power BI report, just to adjust maybe the sum of age title on your graph there. So thank you, Ramona.
Thank you. Yeah.
For the suggestions. Awesome. I appreciate you always. Is using only the age as a correlation parameter. There may be additional confounding parameters, maybe something worth investigating more. Awesome suggestions. Definitely a way, Ridah, for you to kind of expand maybe the way that you are kind of scoring these potential customer and rating these potential customers for the flight schools, and maybe something to add to the surveys.
Exactly. And to answer the question, is it just age as the correlation parameter? I mean, I started with age because the age gap is well, the age range is wide, but there's a lot of other correlations as well. Flight hours is something I can think of the top of my head, and there's so many other things.
It sounds like a lot of it is kind of a combination of age and experience.
Yes.
Contributes to their risk aversion,
Yep.
right? That kind of risk aversion portfolio. But yeah, it definitely worth investigating more. That's awesome. Thank you, Ramona. We have a couple of questions about Duck Lake and lightweight distributed databases. That we'll get to some of those questions as we continue on through here. I want to make sure we give Ridah the chance to get through his stuff, but we'll definitely talk about those more general questions towards the end. So you're collecting a lot of data for these flight schools. You are coming in. A lot of them are using paper still. A couple of things that I want to ask about that too, and these are things that I think all data engineers run into, is what are some of the biggest data quality challenges that you face when you walk into a new interaction with a flight school?
So, do you mind? I don't know. Do you mind redefining the questions? What do you mean by data quality?
So really, kind of what kind of data cleaning activities that you have to do to get the data in the shape that you need to be able to perform the analytics?
I try, and what I do is I try, and before I put myself in a situation where I have to data clean, I ask myself, how can I make sure the Google surveys that I'm creating data, I have to do minimum activity to clean it. And so I make sure that my Google surveys or Google forms are actually accurate enough where they're inputting their data and it's popping up on my Google Sheets, it's coming more accurately and clean. Now, if I have to push this data, and if this data expands and grows, and I have to push it to a database in GCP, for example, then I would use, which I love using a lot, is pandas. And it's just a couple of code snippets to make sure the columns are correct, the rows are correct, and there's no nulls, for example. And if there are any nulls, then I'll do some quick verifications and I'll check on what's going on. And then I would manually check what's going on in each row. But I try and minimize cleaning as much as possible. I try and make sure that my Google form is set up correctly. So when instructors or chief pilots or student pilots are putting in their data, it's coming in literally clean into Google Sheets. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that education for, in this case, kind of those pilots, right? Those teachers is transferable to other people in business situations, right? In other business situations where they're having to deal with stakeholders who might not be as technologically advanced as a data engineer, right? It may not be necessarily correctly formatting Excel correctly in a way that is easy to ingest for a data engineer, or for even reporting. And that education and how you communicate to those people and how you create those templates for people to be able to enter in that data is something that you have to do in any business. So I think that's important to be able to communicate that well and to be able to have that rapport with those people.
Correct. It pretty much, you save yourself a lot of time when you set it yourself, setting up the template correctly. And so that's why I try and make sure I go over the template over and over again, because once there's issues in Google Sheets, and I try to push it to Postgres or BigQuery, then the issue is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I try and have it fixed and ready from the beginning.
Awesome. So we've talked a lot about kind of the reporting that you do, and we talked about a lot about the type of data that you work with flight schools. Tell me, what is your vision for Aviadata long term?
The vision for Aviadata long term, that's a great question, is to stay within the realm of aviation, but focus on qualitative and quantitative data. The numbers of airports, number of electric aircrafts that are coming in, doing a couple of documentaries, interviewing a couple of people in terms of the expansion of vertiports, which are aircrafts that can take off like a helicopter, fly like a plane, that will eventually be open for the public to use. So it's definitely also keeping the consulting and helping flight schools, but growing it in showing that there's so many things you can do in aviation, not just pilot, airport manager, or mechanic. So that's how I see the trajectory for Aviadata is just shedding light on things that are not shed within the aviation industry.
Awesome. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to take a passion like aviation or even sports or music and blend it with data like you've done?
That's a good question. I think the best thing to do is come at it from a curiosity point of view. Don't come at it from, I have to do this because this is my only option. Be curious, and try and do it out of curiosity. Be curious. Why are you doing this? How can you make it better? And don't think of it as a make it or break it scenario. Go with the flow. See where it goes, and use whatever passion you have: music, art, sports, as a place of curiosity. See what you can do from it, and share it with people. Share it with friends. Turn it into a hobby. Make it fun. Make it interesting. Don't do it just because I want to do this, because I want to put it on my resume. I want to put it on my portfolio so people can see it, and so eventually I can make money off of it. Bring some joy into it. Bring some fun into it. And when you're having fun with what you do, you enjoy it. It's no longer stressful. It's so worth it learning how to code, learning how to program. It's so worth it learning AWS or GCP, because you're coming in from a curiosity point of view. You're understanding the why, the what, the where, and the who about it, instead of like, you have to do this because you have to make money. So my philosophy is curiosity over money. Your curiosity eventually will bring in the money. That's my only advice.
And I think that it's such a powerful thing to be really passionate about a certain topic and get to work in that industry. Just that passion, that excitement that you bring to it, really, like you said, if you're doing what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, right? I mean, that's the theme, and I honestly think that it's true. So we have a question, in aviation, avionics, is there any trigonometry involved?
So there's a lot of trigonometry in aviation. Avionics is beautiful because it's the back end of what you see as a pilot. So the trigonometry is already being handled within the avionics. But in aviation, yes, understanding how trigonometry works will help you a lot as a pilot. So basic math is required, nothing crazy, but yes, to answer your question, there's trigonometry involved. And the avionics side of things, it'll take care of it.
Awesome. Great advice to bring joy and curiosity. And I, to this person's point, and I think this might be somebody that I know, but to your curiosity point, that really feeds into that continuous learning, right? That you just have to have as any data professional. You have to bring that curiosity to everything that you do. And if you're not curious anymore, then it's probably time to take a step back and investigate maybe what it is that you want to do with the rest of your career. But that curiosity and that excitement for learning something new and investigating and kind of being that detective is really what will take you far in your career. Whether you end up being uh, a career data engineer, or you end up being an entrepreneur and having your own business and doing independent consulting, that curiosity and that excitement for learning new things will continue to help you be profitable, as you move forward
Exactly.
in life.
Especially with AI, because it does, again, maybe 50% of the 50% at a minimum, maximum maybe 70%. It's not quite there where it does everything, but that curiosity, um, it's that, this curiosity inside our head. It's what drives me, at least, to ask more questions, to ask ChatGPT more questions, and continue asking and back and forth. So, if curiosity really plays a lot.
That's awesome. All right. So if someone from a flight school or aviation company is watching, what is the one thing they should start doing today to better use the data that they have available to them?
Visualize the data they have available to their student pilots, to their CFI. I cannot stress this enough. And I literally mean visualize. I mean bring graphs, charts. Um, there's a lot of CFI meetings with the chief CFI or the chief pilot, and they have charts, numbers, and whiteboards and notebooks. It's all great. Start bringing in graphs, start to visualize. A lot of our pilots are visual people. So why don't we, when we're planning, start to also visualize? I am not saying that we shouldn't write things down. We should, but let's slowly start to digitalize things. Instead of keeping things on paper, let's creating an online document and visualize things on it. Um, Visualize.
Awesome. So we're going to get into some of the fun stuff here now. Tell me, what is your favorite aviation movie or show that you've watched in the past?
Wow. I'll tell you what's not my favorite aviation movie. Top Gun. I've never seen Top Gun 1, never seen Top Gun 2. I'll definitely watch it at some point, but I've never been a fan of it. So there's a lot of fantasy going on in that realm. A lot of it is not real. But my favorite, definitely, it's a classic. It's called Airport from the 1970s.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I love how it's probably one of those movies where it shows you a real description of what flight operations is from a mechanic perspective. And that mechanics, and they're stuck in the airports and they're all grumpy and they have to take out the aircraft. That's
It's a real situation.
so, and people getting mad at each other, and it's real. So that's definitely one of my favorite, and I love to watch it once a year whenever I have nothing to do. So that's definitely my favorite aviation related movie.
That's funny. Hey, my wife would be very upset to hear that Top Gun is not real. So that's too funny. Ramona says Apollo 13. Okay,
That's a beautiful one. Yeah.
that is awesome as well. Very cool. So a few more things here that we're going to go through. When you're working with all this aviation data, Python or SQL, which one is the most important? Which one do you feel is the right path to go to learn first if you're new to data?
If you're new to data, Python. Because with Python, you can connect to databases, you can create pipelines. There are amazing libraries in Python, and you can even use SQLite within Python, if I'm correct.
Yep.
So Python is amazing for visualization, for cleaning, for so many things. SQL is great. I learned this the hard way. I didn't know this. I thought SQL was a programming language. It's you're using it to retrieve information from a database. That's what I ended up realizing after I took a SQL course. And I mean, I could be wrong, but I've realized is because I took my first course was a data analytics course from Coursera, and I had no idea about any of this stuff. I was like, oh, I'll just use SQL because I want to learn how to, I don't know, create a simulation or whatever. And then I ended up learning how to retrieve information from a database. I was like, I don't want to use SQL anymore. But I still use SQL, but I can't emphasize for data, Python, Python, Python.
Okay.
Because you can even use SQL syntax, and I'll explain more within Python by creating connectors.
Right.
So Python is really important.
I do think that Python is super important. I think that you'll hear arguments both ways. I'd love to hear everybody else that's listening their opinion on this. You know, whether or not SQL is a programming language. I think that you get people on both sides. Yeah, Ramona strongly disagrees. I think that you'll get people. I thought that was Nathan. So I think you'll get people on both sides of the fence that will argue that SQL is not a programming language. And I think that you will hear people argue that SQL is not only a programming language, but a fantastic gateway drug into programming. I think that yeah.
I'm definitely biased. I definitely like Python over SQL.
I definitely yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like Python and SQL the same way I feel like Snowflake and Databricks. I love them both. I couldn't imagine my life without either one at this point. And my first day on the job, I didn't really know either. So I feel I feel about both of those the same way I feel about Databricks and Snowflake. Just to be clear, my disagreement is of Python first versus SQL first. More importantly, learn data theory first. Data theory, I think, especially for a data engineer, is so important. Understanding data theory, I think understanding some data modeling, how relationships work, some kind of DSA type stuff, right? Some just data structure, understanding data structures, things like that. I think not only help you in your career, I think also help you when you start to walk into Python. But yeah, I could, yeah. Great insight, Ramona. Thank you. And Nathan has another comment. I'm loving SQLite so much as a lightweight relational database that we can use pretty much natively in Python and Node and many other environments. Yes, SQLite is a fantastic option to use, especially from the programming side. When you're a programmer, when you're a full stack programmer, I have a friend that he is a amazing programmer. He is one of those people that is 100% a 10x programmer. And literally, I asked him a question once, and it was just like a brainstorming. Hey, this would be a great idea. And like the next morning, he had like a full blown program. Said, "Hey, let's take a look at this. I made this last night." And like he's brilliant. But and he works for a robotics company in Texas now, but he's awesome. But also he is a big SQLite fan, and I'm sure that and also into DuckDB and I'm sure into Duck Lake as Duck Lake has come out recently. Awesome, Nathan, man, always glad that you pop on. Ramona, thanks for being so interactive with us tonight. Agree, the database layer ought to be appreciated on its own. Yes, absolutely. Lightweight distributed databases are really, I think this is Nathan too, these days. Yes, and I think that's true, especially when you're talking kind of that lower volume. When you start getting into higher volume, you probably need a Databricks or Snowflake as things start to scale. But I'm hoping that Duck Lake helps to mitigate some of that. No, definitely open to hearing other perspectives. Tiger Beetle then for the finance corner of the database triad. Okay. Awesome. MCP servers even use SQL. Yeah, I mean, it's all good until you're dealing with petabytes that you need processed in the 10, 15 seconds. And I don't know. I mean, honestly, I've only used Databricks for that type size data. So y'all will have to tell me if they can really handle that type of volume, that type of load. I want to applaud you for the idea of Aviadata. Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ramona.
I love Ramona. Ramona is such a cheerleader for everybody else, and always is great. So really looking forward to having Ramona on next week too. We've had some great guests lately. They had a whole slew of guests lately. We had the data coach a few weeks back, Lindsay. She did fantastic. She works with primarily nonprofits. We had Shane last week, who is an author and he also does a podcast as well. And then we have Ridah here this week with Aviadata, and next week we'll have Ramona. So super excited. Definitely a cutoff size for size and performance. Yeah, I do. I think that I don't know if KSB was saying no about the scalability of things like DuckDB and SQLite, but yeah, I mean, and I know I know that Nathan is also a programmer and has been a programmer for a long time, and I suspect that he's probably load tested some of this. So yeah, I trust your guidance. And absolutely excited to have Ramona on next week. Awesome. Let's see. All right. I think this is a cool question that I'm going to ask. And it's a cool question for me because of some experience that I've had myself with getting an opportunity to fly a jet, to fly a plane. But what is your dream plane to fly or work with data on even?
My dream plane to fly ever since I was a kid, it was a Cessna Caravan 208.
Okay.
And yeah, I've always wanted to take my family out and my immediate family out and take them over Florida and just tour, see Florida from the sky. The best plane I want to work with data with is definitely NASA has an aircraft. It's a fighter jet with a variable sweep wing. And I forgot what it's called, but it's a beautiful aircraft. And they try and break the sound barrier with it, but at the same time, they try and change the wing shape of it. So it's really, really cool.
Awesome. Those both sound amazing.
Yep.
And then, and this is one near and dear to my heart. I don't know if I have a box of them here right now, but what is your go-to snack while coding or analyzing? And then I'm going to share mine.
I don't know if a snack is good because sometimes I over snack, but definitely now I'm in the phase of Jolly Ranchers, the ones that you don't crunch, that you just put it in your mouth and you just let it melt.
Okay.
And so that's what I've been doing lately. Before that, it was ice cream, and that was not healthy at all. Before that, it was celery and carrots.
Okay.
And before that, it started with chips, man. Chips was a to-go quick one. But now it's just Jolly Ranchers.
I like the Jelly Rancher idea. I need when I'm coding, when I'm programming, and I'm like in the zone, I need something that crunches, right?
Yeah.
And I like cashews. I have my bag of empty, mostly
Okay.
empty bag of cashews here. Um, but I like cashews. They're easy and they're not too crazy. But also like they're these they're called flip sides. And one side is and it's Townhouse that makes them, I think. But one side is pretzel and one side is cracker. And like
Wow.
they're
Okay.
super addictive. If you've not
Okay.
checked out flip sides, like flip sides are awesome. Anyways, so those are my like go-to
I have to
snack.
try it now.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I think we all need a go-to snack
Yep.
for coding. Uh, so Ramona says, really great chat. Came here with curiosity and leave with lots of joy. Hey, Ramona, that's awesome. That's awesome. Nathan says, is there any mapping tech that you'd recommend? I love flight radar.
So that's a great question. Mapping tech in terms of like, do you mean by tracking flights, or what the code that uses to map the flight routes?
Maybe hit both.
Okay. So what they use a lot is something called ForeFlight and Garmin Flight. There is a free version, but with that, you can actually upload. If you know how to use KML files um, or geospatial data, and I use those files as well, you can upload it into ForeFlight or Garmin, and you can create custom waypoints for pilots. I had a client out of Utah. I did that for them once. They wanted to fly a specific altitude to maintain safety, and I did that for them. You can use Flight Radar. Flight Aware is great, but if you're looking for custom things, uh, Google Earth Pro is amazing, and you can use KML files for that. You can create your own KML file. You can ask ChatGPT to help you understand and how to use KML format, and you can upload it into Google Math Pro, into ForeFlight, into Garmin Aviation, and you can even extract that data from FlightAware, Flight Radar, and other aviation maps as well. There's so many, but the best are FlightAware, Flight Radar, ForeFlight, and Garmin.
Cool. For those people that may not be aware, can you share with us what a KML file is?
Yes, KML file is not like Python, so it's structured differently, and it's I want to say it's similar to HTML, but it's not in terms of its structuring. But you get to use three coordinates: latitude, longitude, and the last one is degree. You can customize it. So there's so many things you can customize in a KML file, but primarily it's the latitude, longitude, and the elevation. Those three points, data points, are essential to creating custom air routes and pushing them into ForeFlight or Garmin. So yeah, longitude, latitude, and the elevation. You can go into more detail, but that's the bread of it.
Here, we've got some comments about snacks here too. Uh, Thick Pennsylvania pretzels with peanut butter and dark chocolate. Uh, that sounds delicious. Um, Frozen blueberries. Oh, I like that. Frozen blueberry. I love like frozen bananas too. But frozen blueberries is a good one.
That would give me a brain freeze.
Brain freeze, right? Blueberries, many. Yeah, Nathan says blueberries, many. Um, yeah, it, good old Garmin, like good old Garmin. Yeah, that was Nathan's comment about when you were talking about the different flight visualization tools and KML files. I remember Google Maps KML files.
Yep, you can use that as well.
Very cool. Thanks so much for the references. An XML derivative. Okay, KML is XML derivative. That's a good explanation. 11 p.m. is not a good time to discuss snacks. Now I want pretzel with dark chocolate. That's awesome. I think I also want. If we have some Bluebell peanut butter ice cream downstairs that I might go get after this. Now that y'all are talking about peanut butter and chocolate, not good for my sugar or my waistline, but will be good for in my stomach. This is sounding like a good snack party. Awesome, guys! Great conversation tonight. Really loved having everybody on. Nathan, always glad to see you jump on, man. Ramona, so excited that you jumped on tonight. Great suggestions, great conversation. Really look forward to having you on next week, Ramona. And Ridah, tell everybody where they could get in contact with you if they want to reach you.
The fastest way to reach out to me is on my LinkedIn. You can reach to me, Ridah, at LinkedIn, Ridah Sherbaji. You can Google me as well on www.aviadatahq.com. And you can always email me as well, ridah.sherbaji@gmail.com. But the fastest way, just look me up on LinkedIn and I exist.
And I'm going to share his LinkedIn in the chat here.
Sure.
As well as aviadatahq.com, so that everybody has those links. But Ramona's sending you a connection request. Very cool.
Awesome.
Guys, again, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Ridah, thank you so much for being on and talking about your business and your learning journey. And so excited to have you on, and look forward to seeing everybody next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thank you all. Have a great week, and talk to you all next week.